for the bris today. So I couldn't get into the parking lot. That's how I got back in. Baruch Hashem for good things. What is a mashmira? It says that tonight is going to be a mashmira for Svegen. Good things. Okay, so we are up to 5 lines from the bottom of Daf Kuf Tashav. Today is Daf Kuf Yud. So what does it say in the Gemara? Taner Rabbanan, Minayin Lekoyin Shabbat Umakrav Karbonoisav V'Choleis U'V'Chol Shosha Yirsa. How do you know that if a kohen wants to bring a carbon, he doesn't have to wait for his mishmar? Whenever he wants, he can come and bring a carbon. Zok Rashi Shabo Makriv Im Nodar carbon Oishayim Mutul Olav Chatas V'Asham Chayva Makriv Af B'Mishmar Shein Shaloi. He can do it whenever he wants. Uminayin Shavedasa V'Oira Shaloi. How do you know that he gets to keep the meat and the hide? So you can ask, Avedasa means meat? I don't know. See Rashi says, Avedasa schar Avedasa. The schar for him doing the work on the carbon, Danu Bisara. So how do you know he gets to keep it? If it's not his mishmar, so who said that he gets to keep the meat and the hide from his carbonis? Are they not normally given to the Anshe Yosy mishmar? Talmud Lamer v'ish is Kadeshav lo yiyu. Whose Kadeshim should they go to himself? Haketza. How does it work? Let's say he was a balmum, and that means he's not allowed to do the avodah, but he could still eat from the karbonis. The avodah he'll have to give to a kohen that mishmar because he's no longer able to do it because he's a balmum. But vavedasa, the meat, va'ira and its hide, shaloi, that will go to the kohen the balmum. Let's hear Rashi. Imaya balmum royu lecha, but ve'ein royu lahakri. So therefore, since he himself cannot do the avodah, therefore he cannot be memana a shliach to do the avodah. Ein yochel laso shliach lakrova misha yirtza. Ela noisna livnei mishmar. He has to give it into the mishmar, and whoever does it, does it. But since he is royal lachila, a kohen balmum is allowed to eat kachim. Karina be the ish es kadeshav. It's still his, and therefore there's a lo yiyeh. He gets the meat and he gets the hide. There are those who learned that actually goes to the Anshe Hamishmar, since they're the ones who are makrivit. But we're going with the pashtus that the Malkoy Malmum gets the meat and the hide of his carbon because he could eat it, even though he does not get to select which kohen is makrivit. What about him? Zok Rashi, this Zaken is still Veroyal Avodah. He can still do the Avodah. We're going to see soon. But he cannot eat it. So when he's old or sick, he could do Avodah, but he cannot eat. There, since he could do the Avodah, he has the right to appoint any kohen he wants to do the Avodah for him. But Vavedasa, the meat and the hide, the meat he cannot eat, therefore goes Anshe Mishmar. And I guess the hide goes along with the meat. What is he disabled from doing just because he's a zaken or a chayla? Hey, Chedami, if he can do the avodah, if he can actually avodah, of course, means he can eat it, as Rashi learned. I know it all, right? If he can eat it, then avedasa va'ira nami to have it today. He should also get to keep the meat and the hide. V'delay matzi avid avodah, and if he can't do any avodah at all, shliach echimashi. How could he be on a shliach to do the avodah? So the Gemara is really asking if he can actually do the physical avodah. If he can do the physical avodah, so then he could eat too. Why wouldn't he be able to eat? If he's healthy enough to do the heavy lifting of working in the Beis Hamikdash, why wouldn't he be able to eat? And if he cannot do avodah, so then how can he make a shliach? Amar Papa sheyochel asa ydet chak. He's an old guy. He struggles, but he can get through it. He could do it. Therefore, avodah dechi avodah ydet chak. Avodah, that since if he did it ydet chak, he worked hard, he slept, he did avodah. It's still considered the proper avodah. Therefore, umash v'shliach. But achila A person who's older and sick can't eat too much, can't eat a whole half a cow. The chiachol al yidei echad, achila gasa is considered achila gasa. As Rashi says, shenafshi kotabam, that's not achila. Achila gasa lav klumu, mishum hachi avoidasa va'ir las hamishmar. The avoider that's difficult for him to do, but he can still do. We say he could be mamana shliach for, because technically he can still do the avoider. But even if he forces himself to eat what he normally cannot eat, that's not called eating, and therefore it's going to be not going to be able to pick who gets to eat it. It gets left to be distributed evenly to the Anshe Mishra.
For the Levim, there's an age limit between, I think it's, 30 to 50 or something like that?
But Kohanim seem not to have that. The Kohanim do not have an age limit. As long as they can physically do the avodah, and Tosfos will actually comment on that. So let's see Tosfos. You don't find an age limit. I guess till he starts shaking, till he starts shaking. The article say he shakes. Until he shakes, he still can push himself to the avodah. Achila gasi lav klumi. So here the Gemara says, since achila gas is not achila, we don't even consider it that it can eat ayidei chak. How do we know this? Tosfos mapik midur shlokish to amar ba'choylitz ha'oichal achila gas b'yom kippurim potter. It says in the pasuk ki chalish asher loisa una b'nechrisa. It's not called that you were loisa una. You didn't indulge because it's not a proper achila. Milasan. So if someone ate on Yom Kippur achila gasa, he's not violated the loisa una. V'im timer fake Tosfos. The perk mishama already knows or v'shama. Kavihadu amar Rabba bar Bachana amar B'yochanan. My dichsev, it says in the pasuk tzadikim yelchibam upashim yikashtubam. In the words of Hashem, tzadikim will go and Roshoyim will be nichshalin. Mashal of shnei bnei adam. Two people who are doing the same carbon pesach. Shetzolu peschei mechad. Achlu l'shem mitzvah. If a person is the tzadikim yelchibam and he ate the pesach l'shem mitzvah, but ve'echad achlu l'shem achila gasa, and the other guy ate it for an achila gasa. Zeh she'achlu l'shem achila gasa. It says upashim yikashtubam. And the person who ate it l'shem shemayim for the mitzvah is tzadikim yelchibam. Amal Shlokish, I don't understand something. Rasha Karaslay, you're calling him Urishar Mikashlibam. Shar Mikashlibam. Nihidlo over the mitzvah in Amufchar. Okay, he didn't do a mitzvah in Amufchar. He didn't eat it b'teyavain. But the mitzvah me of it, are you telling me that there's no mitzvah at all by eating the Pesach Achila Gasa? So Tosfos from Shlokish is kasha, mashra the Yoti Dechayva. It's much Yoti Dechayva. So if you Yoti Dechayva eating Achila Gasa, that means this kohen should be Yoti Dechayva eating the carbon Achila Gasa. Why can't he appoint who's going to get it? The husband like Amar the Yotza. It doesn't say that he's Yotza by eating the carbon Pesach with an Achila Gasa. El Deloy Mikri Rosh. It just says that it's not called a Rosh. So therefore, here also he's not going to be Yotza eating the mitzvah, eating the carbonis, if he's eating an Achila Gasa. But there's another very big distinction. Doesn't say that the Poshim ate it achila gasa mamish. Maybe then Itaka would not be yotze, and that's very, very consistent with our Gemara. Elakleimer she'ein oichloi l'shem pesach elakidei liyosav. That's what it means. It means he ate it. Of course, it was not an achila gasa, but he didn't have in mind to eat it l'shem mitzvah. Rather, he ate it just to fresh. That's the Poshim Yikashluba. Teda, bring your right. Like achila gasa. Elo l'shem achila gasa. Well, the shleimar the shtei achilas gasa saying there's two types of achilas gasas. But there's achila gasa when you can fit in the pickle, and the achila gasa when you can't fit in the pickle. Right? We know you don't know much of the pickle, right, Mazi? And I was very full, and he wanted another piece of kishka by the kiddush. By the kiddush, he couldn't get another morsel of food into his mouth. So Sfer said, if you want to have the next course, take 2 fingers, put it as far down your throat as you can, and you'll relieve some pressure inside. He tells him, wenn ich hab Zeit auf 2 fingers, wird doch schon like the pickle. So before the pickle is one level of achila gasa, then after the pickle is another level of achila gasa. Zok to Gemara. Weiter. Amar b'sheshes. Im haya koyin tame. If he was a koyin tame and the carbon that we're discussing him to be makriv is a carbon tzibur, then he still could be makriv because tuma hutra b'tzibur, and therefore he's still qualified to be makriv this carbon, and therefore noisna l'chol mi sheyirtza va'avoidasa va'ira la'anshe mishma. Let's see Rashi. Im hayit koin shal mishmar tamei. The koin of a mishmar was tamei. V'yesh le'carbon tzibur lahakriv. What I don't understand is he's one of the kohanim in the mishmar. So let somebody else do it. It's who said he was going to do this carbon tzibur? I guess they made the guy relish, whatever it is. It turned out that it was this guy's turn. Huh?
Wanted to give it to someone outside the mission.
Right, but the question: how is it his inside the mission? How is it his? Maybe he won a guy or something.
Carbon.
No, it's a carbon tzibur. Right. So somehow he was zoichet to it. Maybe he did. There was a pious, whatever it is. He got the rights to it, and he became tamei. He's allowed to give it to anybody he wants, which means we're saying that technically he's still qualified to do the avodah, even though he's tamei. Dr. Rashi, the hayel do yachal akrivai, since he could be makriv, the carbon tzibur doiches atoma. Therefore, shliach nami matzi of it. And Rashi tells us as an aside, carbon tzibur babatuma. However, ve'ein nechel batuma ketetayim. A carbon tzibur you could be makriv, the coin working on it, be makriv it while he's tamei, but no one's allowed to eat it when they're tamei. So therefore, he can appoint, since he can do the avodah, he can appoint anybody he wants, as much as people are even not in the mishmar, but he's not allowed to eat it. Hechadam. What is the case here? If there are people who are tar in that mishmar, Rashi says, that could do it, Tameim mimatzah. How could you allow Tameim to do it? And since this person would not be able to do avodah because other kohanim taharim in his mission would take over, how could he then appoint somebody? And if there's no taharim, so what does it mean? Avodah va'ir l'anshei mishmar. How could the anshe mishmar eat it if everybody in that mishmar is tamei? Hatameim ninu v'loy matzachli. A tamei might be allowed to be makriv a carbon, but no one's going to suggest that a tamei could eat the carbon. Amarava emelav alimumin taharim shabayis mishmar. Yes, there are no kohanim taharim in the mishmar, kohanim that would have otherwise been able to do the avodah. But there were kohanim in the mishmar that were balei mumin. So you have eaters, you don't have workers. Can they start right? They're here to eat. They're here to eat by the kiddush, never to help set it up or to take it apart. Zokt heilige Rashi. Zokt heilige Rashi. Tameim mimatz avdi v'chim lematz avdi shliach echem mashri. V'chim lematz avdi shliach echem mashri. L'balei mumin taharin mitzchalekas. They could still give out to eat the carbon to balei mumin if they're tar the karmel mizvachim ish chaylik ba'afilu bal mum v'kachim uvamanachayis. Gavaldi. So I joined the pause for a second because it's a very interesting Tosfos. There's a discussion of whether or not we know Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur. Does that mean to the extent that even if there's other people who can do it but the Hayra, you could still do it because it's Mutter or not? So Zok Tosfos, L'Raf Sheshes Parach. This Gemara's Kasha is going according to Rav Sheshes. We know we're talking about Rav Sheshes over here. The Shema'ini Lo Rav Sheshes, we happen to know that Rav Sheshes says in Yuma, that Tumah D'chuya B'tzibur. If Tumah was Hutra B'tzibur means it's completely mutter, there's no reason to even try to find somebody who is tahar. There's no problem. V'ika Tamei Mutahar Loimatzu. But I'm sorry, he does not say Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. He says Tumah D'chuya B'tzibur, meaning really you shouldn't do the avodah with your tummy. If you have no choice, so we'll let the avodah be done by a kohen tamei. And therefore, the ika tameim utahar, if there are kohanim tameim that can do the avodah, but there's also kohanim taharim that can do the avodah, loy matzu avdi tameim. You wouldn't allow the tameim to do it because it's only tumah dechuya b'tzibur. We'll push off the prohibition of a kohen tamei doing the avodah when we're stuck. But the ika polakasam, there happens to be someone who argues over there and says it's selechatchila. There's no reason to find someone who's tahar. It's 100% mutter with a kohen that's tamei. I feel like it tamei with the matzah of the tamei. So clearly, Rav Sheshes in our sugya is sticking to his guns that he had in Yuma, that Tuma is the Chuya B'tzibur, and therefore, we will only allow this Kohen to do the Avodah when he's Tomei, and therefore to be Memana Shliach to do this Avodah, if all the Kohanim were Tomei. Amar Bashi, Imhaya Kohen Gadol Einin, we know that a Kohen Gadol is an Einin, he's allowed to be Makar Karbanis. A Kohen Gadol is the only one who, even when he's an Einin, he could do the Avodah. Therefore, he could appoint anyone he wants. As Rashi says, the Chiva and the Kohen Gadol makar v'einin. A Kohen Gadol can be makar of karbanos while he's an einin. Dichsev la'aviv u'le'imay lo yitama. U'min ha'mikdash lo yetze. So therefore, imeis aviv ve'imay the have einin afilu hachi mikedushas lo yatsa. He still has the kedusha of Kohen Gadol. V'lo yechalo climber the avidasa sheyavah v'aninus lo tischalo. The avodah that Kohen Gadol does when he's an einin is not nischalel. It's 100% kosher and proper. But another Kohen, for instance, the Kohen Hedjit, if he didn't leave the mikdash when he was an einin, he will be mechalel the avodah. So therefore, Kohen Gadol, and the food, the meat of the korban is la'anshei mishmar. That goes la'anshei mishmar because that the Kohen Gadol wasn't allowed to eat. More, my kamash malam. What great chiddush is Reb Ashi telling us? We all know that a kohen gadol who's an einin can do avodah, and we all know that a kohen gadol who's an einin is not allowed to eat from karbonis. So what does Reb Sheshes tell me? Tanina kohen gadol makar v'einin ve'inay oichayel. Not only can he not eat the kachim while he's an einin, tonight he'll lose his status of an einin. So maybe let him take some meat now. He'll put it away until tonight, where it's still the zman achil of the meat, and he'll eat it tonight. He can't even get meat while he's an einin, even though he's only going to eat it later on after the status of einin is gone. So why do I need Rav Ashi to tell me this halacha once again, even though it's a brisa? It's lekruvehu. Maybe that the Torah allows a kohen gadol and einin to do an avodah. That's only for him himself to do the avodah. But avalashavi shliach, but to give the kohen gadol the ability to be memana shliach to do the avodah in his stead, like every other normal kohen could. But maybe when he's an einin, it's only a carve out for him himself to do the avodah, not to appoint anybody else. Lo matzah mashri kamash shalom Rabashi that no, once a kohen gadol could do the avodah when he's an einin, he's like any kohen any day who can do the avodah himself, and therefore has a right to delegate the avodah to any individual that he wants. Zok Telik Mishnah. Hagoyzel Hager. So once again, we've already went through most of the halachas of Hagoyzel Hager even before we got to the Mishnah. Hagoyzel Hager v'nish b'lo yumeis hareza mishalem keren v'chaymesh who to the kohanim of that mishmar v'osham l'mizbeach, and the osham, the carbon, goes to the mizbeach. Shenemar says, "V'mein le'ish goyel lahashiv ha'osham elov, ha'osham ha'mushav l'Hashem l'koyin milvad el hakipurim asher yechaper boy elov." So Zok Gemara, what would happen if Haya Milas Akesef Ves Osham? He was on his way up to the Beis Hamikdash with the cash that he was going to give the Kehanim and the Osham that he was going to bring on the Mizbeach Umeis, and the perpetrator died. We're no longer talking about the ger dying. The perpetrator died. So Akesef Yinasein Levana. See, yesterday we had a case where he made it, but on the way up he met the ger, and the ger was alive. And he said, "Hey, I was at the Zoom funeral. Vice the guy said it was a fraud, right?" But here he died on the way. So what do you do to Kesef? Hakesef Yinasein Levana. His children get it. Why is it Rashi? Shall Gadol. They were zoich in it, in the Mrs. Ager, because now there's no one to give it to. Ella, the boy lemever ashava, he would have to do a shava. Ki heichet it have like a para. Ashvu say. As far as the Kenyan who belongs to, they get it to the ger. Lemai says father into kapara. His father's dead. Can't have a kapara. V'hashashu like a kapara, even the mislay. So they get it. I guess if he knows the levadim. The asham. What about the asham? Can't bring a carbon asham. It's like a chatos shemesu ba'ileh. The asham yira achi yistoyev. We set it out to pasture. It gets a mum. You sell it. The yiplu damav linadova. And what do you do with the money? You give it to linadova as a Rashi. L'shoifro is case of mizbeach. There were pushkas where the money that was placed into them by donors was used to buy extra kabbanis, oilois, like carbon oilois, basar, the shame, the basar would be burnt on the mizbeach, but oiris like kahanim, and the hides would be distributed to the kahanim. Gewaltig. Nasa nakesa, let me see what the Aleph says in the Bach. If I can find it. Here it is. Nasa nakesaf lanche mishmar umeis. So the Bach is telling us what it means is meis koydem shakrivu carbon. So the money was already given to the Anshe Mishmar. The Kohanim already have the money, umeis, but we had not yet brought the carbon. So the halacha is, since the kapara is not going to happen anyway, the father already died, maybe they should be entitled to get the cash back. The Yoshim cannot tell the Kohanim, give us back the money. Shenema, because it says in the pasuk, the ish asher yitain lekayin lo yiyeh. The koyin is a one-way trip. You give the money to the koyin, it stays with the koyin. The koyin has a no return policy. What about nas in the case of liyahayariv? Now there was different families did the avodah on different days, on different weeks. So let's say there was the week where the Kohanim of the Yahayariv family were doing the avodah. They actually had a very large family. And the next shift, the next week, was going to be the family of Yedaya. There was a much smaller family there. So if you gave it in the week of Yahayariv, everybody would get a little bit of money. If you gave it on the week of Yedaya, everyone will get more money. That will become relevant later on today. So you gave the kesef to the people from the last mishmar, but the asham didn't roll along until the next mishmar, Yedaya. Yotza, you're still Yotza. Uzok Rashi, why are you Yotza? Kidemafarish of Ozil, like the Mishnah is going to Firais. Shamevik Zeloi, actually heavy carbon Ashama Yotza. If you paid the cash before you brought the carbon, that will still work. And therefore, V'zezach b'shaloi, thank you so much. V'zezach b'shaloi, Yahayarav got the money, V'zeh b'shaloi, and Yedaya got the carbon. Could someone tell me how you pronounce that word? You have any art scroll? Is it Yedaya? Yedaya? Yedaya, okay. Gewaltig. Zok Gemara, what happened to who was the opposite? What if it's Yotza? What if it's Asham Liyarim? You brought the carbon before you paid. So the carbon was brought before the change of the guards, the Kesef Lidaya, and the money was given after the change of the guards. That we're going to see doesn't work because the carbon, the money has to be given first. So therefore, Im Kaima Asham, if the Bnei Yehayarib have not yet been Makrib the Asham, yes, you gave it over to them, but they had not yet processed it yet, then you say, no, Yehayarib, cease and desist, and Yakrivu Bnei Yedaya. The Bnei Yedaya are going to be Makrib this Asham. Vim Loi, what if it's too late? And therefore, he wasn't Yoitza, the Kapara, because the Asham was brought before the money was paid, then Yachzir V'Yavi Asham Acher. He has to go, the perpetrator, the Ganav, has to bring another Asham. Why is that? If you brought your money before you brought the carbon, you're going to be Yaitza. But and that's also going to be learned out of Psukim in the Gemara. What about Nasan Sakarim v'Lo Nasan Sachaimesh? He will still get his kapara, as we learned earlier in the Mishnah, is Ein HaChaimesh Ma'ak. So we learned the Chaimesh is not Ma'akim to the carbon when you're giving the Chaimesh to the Nigzal. Here you see, even if it's a question of giving it to the Koyanim, like Gesel Ager, the Chaimesh is not Ma'ak. Okay, we have a lot of information in this Mishnah that we bit off. Now we're going to see if we could chew it out. Tanu Rabbanon. Asham Zeker. So let's look at the Lashon pasuk. Pasuk says, "V'mein leish goyel lahashiv ha'asham elav ha'asham hamushav l'Hashem lakoy." So what are we referring to when we say the asham? Zeh keren. The asham is referring to the keren. Hamushav zeh chaymish. That's referring to the chaymish. Fact Gemara, maybe the asham means the carbon asham. Fact Gemara, like who cares? We're talking about the whole thing. It's got to be done anyway. Who cares which word in the pasuk refers to this and which word in the pasuk refers to that? Ulamai nafkamina. It makes a massive nafkamina. The nafkamina is what is the Torah referring to with the word asham? Is the Torah referring to the keren with the word asham or not? What does the nafkamina if the Torah is referring to keren using the word asham? La fukim de Rava, because Rava makes very significant hay out of the fact that the Torah refers to the keren with the word asham. The Amar Rava, gezel ager shechsira belayla. If you gave the cash back at night, if you gave the cash to the kaim at night, lo yotza. You know why you're not yotza? Can you bring a carbon asham at night? No. So since we're referring to the kesef, to the keren as an asham, it will have many restrictions of a carbon asham, and therefore you wouldn't be able to do the return at night. What if you give it? You paid half of it at a time. Lo yotza. You can't bring a half a carbon. My time asham kar yerachman. Asham kar yerachman. So you asked me, Akasha, maybe asham is referring to the asham, and hamushav is referring to the keren. And the nafkamina would be whether or not we have Rava's drasha. So now it's important to us that asham should be referring to the keren. How do you know it's referring to the keren? Maybe it's the ayil. Zakta Gemara, kishahu aimer milavad elak purim. After it says asham hamushav, then it says milavad elak purim. So obviously, up until now, we were not talking about the elak purim. Avoimer asham zakeren, and since the keren is of an asham, it does have certain restrictions similar to a carbon asham as a house that has to be returned. Tanyedach. Asham zakeren, hamushav zachaimish. Oyainay ella asham zachaimish. Maybe the asham is the chaimish. Laman afkamina la fukim mesnisen. It's not. It says in our Mishnah. Nasan lai zakeren, but loy nasan lai zachaimish. Eina chaimish ma'akev. If the asham is the chaimish, then the chaimish would be ma'akev. Adrabah, chaimish ma'akev. Because that's what asham means. You see clearly that Hashamay b'roishai is not the chamishas. Avoimer asham zakeren, and therefore that's ma'akev. The chaimish is not. Tanyedach asham zakeren, amushav zachaimish. U'v'gezel hager hakasav medaber, and the pasuk is referring to gezel hager. Oyinay ella hamushav zakefel, and maybe we're speaking about genevas hager, and the ger is alive. And we're talking about paying kefil to the ger. In this same Indian, it says so you see clearly we're not speaking about kefil. We're speaking on the moment where there's no chiv kefil on, just a keren, and that's where you add a chiddush. Gufa, Amarava, gezel ager shechsir balayla lo yotza, yichsirer chatzayin lo yotza. My time asham kar yerachmana. V'yamarava gezel ager she'ein boy shava pruta l'chalkai nukai. So here we have it. He's going to give to the kohen in the Mishnah. There's 200 kohanim working today in the Beis Hamikdash, and you only stole $50. So you're end up going to be giving less than a pruta to each of the kohanim in the Mishmar. Lo yotzi dechevasa. You're not yotze, and you won't get your kapara. You have to give each kohen a minimum of a shava pruta. Now you can steal $5 from a ger, and it's going to cost you a fortune with the kohanim. My timer. So you're going to say no. Karen doesn't mean my timer. It has to be a hashava to each coin. Giving each coin less than a shava pruta is not worth anything. So now you see, until you think, okay, you steal from a ger, and you can get out of it, he dies. You see, it could cost you big money if you steal from a ger. So boy, Rava is a very simple shaila.
Really big money.
It costs you more. If you have to give a shava pruta to every kohen in the Mishmar, there's 200 kohanim in the Mishmar, that'll be a lot more than what you stole. Yes, you have to give each one at least a shava pruta.
No, he was saying gozel gershim, but
when you split it up, that every coin should get his little piece, because every coin in the mishmar gets his fair share, each coin is going to end up getting such a small chelik. You're going to have to add to it so that each coin should get a minimum amount. So, fact Gemara, what if you're an industrious Jew? We mentioned that in the mishmar of Yehoyariv, there are a lot of kohanim, but in the next mishmar there weren't so many. So, what are you going to wait? How about ein boy lemishmeres Yehoyariv? But the yesh boy turning on Amud Beis, the yesh boy lemishmeres Yedah. Mao, can he just wait? Zok to Gemara, Mao. Hey Chadami, what was the case? What was the case? The Yayiv liyada b'mishmeres Yada. If you're going to wait and do the whole process later, of course there's no problem. Everything's good. We want to know if you could do even better than that. I don't want to wait till next week. I slept up to Yerushalayim. Now I have to wait another week, or else I got to pay a penalty. Let me give it to you. Giving the carbon to your it's just a mishmar, and I'll give the money to Yedaya, but I'm giving it to him a week early. It's not considered that you're bringing anything. Since the money was never going to be going to Yehoyariv, because there's too many kohanim in Yehoyariv. So giving it, so it really was always destined to go Yedaya, give it to him early. You should be able to give it to him early. Take the Gemara says take. We're not sure. Let's see Taisus. He can bring the Asham now right away. And they'll the Mishmar of Yehoyariv will be makrib the carbon. Apapisha kesav nosan liyadaya. Kedikatani bepirkin nosan the kesav liyarib Asham ladaya yatsa. You're allowed to give it to two different people. So that Gemara take boy Rav Kohanim Mahu Shiyachlu Gezel Ager Kenegi Gezel Ager. You know, they don't want to start splitting up pennies to me, pennies to you. How about any two Kohanim are in the same Mishmar make up any Gezel Ager that comes in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you keep. Actually, it would be Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, because they did the changing of the guard, but Alechem upon them. So anything that came up until Tuesday, you keep, and then I'll get it all from Tuesday and on. This way, we're not taking pennies. Mi aminon asham karyer achmona. Do we say that it's considered like a carbon? And the carbon, you're not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to tell you, you know what? I'm on a carb-free diet. You take all the minchas, and I'll take all of the meat, or vice versa. You can't even say you take some minchas, you take all the minchas from Monday to Tuesday, and I'll take the minchas of Wednesday and Thursday. Can't do that. So if we consider the money like the carbon, then money would have the same restriction. Af gezel ager ein chalkin gezel ager connect gezel ager. Oidoma gezel ager mamanahu. When it's cash, it all works out to end. I don't like a carbon where I have to have a chelik of each carbon. Here, just money anyway. Hadar pashta ashtam kay rachmana, and no, you have to take your fair share each time. You can't swap. Ravacha b'rei Rava masn lo behedya. He didn't declare it as a shaila. He said so straight out. Omar Rava kayhanim in chalkin gezel ager connected gezel ager my timer asham karya rachman. Boy Rava had a very interesting shaila. Kayhanim begezel ager, the right that the Kohanim have to get Gezel Ger, Mitaris, what are they getting it? Because really, if the Ger was alive, you would be paying this to the Ger. So are they getting it Mitaris Yorshin? Yorshin Havu? Do they have a status of a Yorish? Or Mekabel Matanas Havu? Or are they just getting a gift as Matnas Kuna from the Rebbeinu Shalom? Lamai Nafkamina. Why do I care why they're getting it? They're getting it. The Teretz is going to Gozal Chametz. What if the perpetrator stole Chametz from a Ger before Pesach, and it was over Lava Pesach? Could he say Hareshal Chalafanecha? To the Ger himself, the Gazlan could have said Hareshal Chalafanecha. And therefore, the Amid Yorshin Havu, if the Kohanim were merely designated as the Yorshim, the stand-in Yorshim for the Ger, so they should be able to give the Yorshim whatever they could have gotten away giving to the original victim. Hainu Hai, the Arsi Meres. This is what belongs to your father, to the person who you're yarshening from. This Hareshal Chalafanecha, I can say to you as well. But if you're going to tell me, no, they're not yarshening anything. The Torah just gives a new matnas kahuna to Koyanim this money. So therefore, matana ka'amar achmana the neis of lahu. Baha and chametz shaval of a Pesach, which is worthless, like a yoiv lahumiti. The afra ba'almahu, it's merely afra ba'al. Tosfos asks, how are we asking the shaila? Did we not a moment ago say that each kohen has to get his fair share? He has to receive something. Wouldn't that prove that it's a matana? So that's Tosfos' are. So Tosfos suggests maybe it was a different person, maybe it was Rabba Namadal, maybe it's Rava, but the Shita Mekabetzes and the Marshal have other interesting ways to resolve the shaila. Rabbi Zira had a shaila. Boy Hachi. He had a different shaila. He disagreed with the shaila of Rava because he said, even if they're makabel matana, that still doesn't say that I can't accept the chametz. I can't say Reish Chalavnecha. Halay bailon tahi matana amar rachmana deneisavlu. This is the matana that Hashem said you should give it. The same thing that you would have given to the ger had he been alive, you can give that same matana, even though it's useless. You can give to the kohanim. So your shaila Rava of whether or not it's considered makabel matanos or Yerusha, that would not have an impact on the way you said it does, will not have an impact on whether or not you can return chametz at asher bana. And this is what would be a legitimate shaila. What if a kohen, his fair share of the gezel ger was 10 behemoths? So who knows what type of heist this was? He stole a whole flock of animals from the ger, and the chelik that each individual kohen was going to get was going to be 10 behemoths. So the question was, does the kohen have to separate meiser from it? Do you say yarshin havu? They're considered like yarshin. If the estate buys their chayiv, or maybe they're considered like someone who received the matana, your potter, so that's the shaila. So the way I explained the shaila was that one kohen got 10 animals, because that's what Rashi is. Because enough of the kohen. One kohen got 10 animals. So it's not a shaila of as a group. If the kohanim got 10 animals before we split up and we each take one, is there a chiyuv to be maaser? It's mashma. Even if you yourself got 10, there's still a shaila. I'm sorry.
No meiser if you get it from matana.
That's right. If you go buy 10 behemoths, you're not mechuyev to take ma'aser behema. If you have 10 behemoths that were born in your flock, that's when you have to take ma'aser behema. Yeah. Okay. Zok Gemara weiter. My. So Tashma, let's see if we could bring a raya, and the ultimate raya is going to be that the brisa refers to the gezel ager as matanos kahuna. That's going to be the ultimate raya. But in the meantime, we're now taking a nice tour through Hilchas Matnas Kahuna. My Tashma, Esrim va'arba Matnas Kahuna nitnu la'Aaron levana. There were 24 Matnas Kahuna that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Aaron and his children. V'chulon nitnu v'chalal u'pratu chalal. When the pasuk discusses Matnas Kahuna, there's a klal pratu klal there, and it also mentions there ubris melech. What is the significance of that? That the Torah puts the klal pratu klal there, and he also puts the bris melech there to tell us that kol mekayman. If you're mekayim Matnas Kahuna, ki'ilu mekayim klal pratu klal, it's as if you're mekayim kol Torah kula, which we know you can darshan with the klal pratu klal, ubris melech and the bris melech. Okay, but kol over alim, you have the other effect. Kilo overall klal pratu klal uvrish melech. Okay, so let's just see Rashi how he explains this member. Zokt Rashi, klal pratu klal. It says, referring to Matnas Kahuna, l'chol kache b'nei Yisrael, l'chol nesunin l'moshchel. Klal, that's a klal. It's inclusive of all the Matnas Kahuna. Then the pasuk says, v'zehi l'cha. That's a prat. That sounds more individualizing the matanas. I'm not sure if there's limudim learned out of this, or if it's just a figure of speech of how the Torah represented it. And then it says kol matana b'fnei atzma. I'm sorry, it's prat because it's called matana b'fnei atzma. It seems to be Parat kol matanos b'nei atzma. I think the Torah even lists off over there the different matanos, and then afterwards the Torah says v'chol terumas hakodeshim chazav v'kol. And then after all this, the pasuk mentions v'aduk siv bris melach oilam b'soifa parsha. So therefore we learn kol makayim and kilo kayim kol Torah kula shenitna lidrash bechlal uprat uklal ucheilu kayim kol hakarbonos shenitna ben bris melach. So what does it mean to take your makayim to bris melach? It's as if you're makayim all of the karbonos on which there's a bris melach. Okay, so now let's go through the karbonos that we have, or the model school that we have. Anyway, there's Eser b'Mikdash. There's 10 that were only in the Beis Hamikdash in the Azar. V'dal b'Yerushalayim, 4 that were relevant in all of Yerushalayim. V'Eser b'Gvulim, and 10 matanos that were everywhere, not even in Yerushalayim, not even in Eretz Yisrael. Eser b'Mikdash. What are those? Chatos behema. The Kohanim get the basar of chatos behema, the chatos ha'oif, v'Osham vadai, v'Osham toloi, v'Zivchei shalmei tzibur. I'm at 5. The leftover oil used in the process of the Mitzayra, the Kohanim get. That's considered as one item. The leftover of the carbon oimer of the Shtei Lechem. Okay.
7.
Okay. V'lechem apanim, and the lechem apanim is 9. The shiorei menachos. So yeah, I'm sorry, I counted wrong. And the shiorei menachos. I'm saying in the next set, there's two count together. So there you have your 10, you have your count of 10. Va'arba b'Yerushalayim, ha'bechayra, because a bechayra is allowed to be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. Va'bikurim is anywhere in Yerushalayim. Va'hamuram min ha'toida ve'el nazar. Those two are together. The parts that are separate from the toida and el nazar, like the breads and stuff like that. The oyros is bread, and I think it's a chasav shaykh. And the oyros kachim, and the hides of the kachim. Why is that called Yerushalayim? So I believe Rashi comments on the hides are called Yerushalayim oyros oyla v'chatois v'shamas. That's what it means in Yerushalayim. But kachim kalim, there they don't even go to oyros to the kohanim. Oyrosim levilim. Kedamar bezvachim perek tvoyoyim mishamachi kachashav lu bahadei hanach the Yerushalayim. Why are they considered matanos of Yerushalayim? L'mu'utei de einach shavim b'dehanach de gevulim. They're not considered. It just means to say they're not considered like things that are in the gevulim. The hani oiris lo misyavelahu ela b'Yerushalayim. They could only be given to the kohanim in Yerushalayim. V'had hanach de b'mikdash lechashuv. Why aren't they considered with those that are in the Beis Hamikdash themselves? They're coming out of the karbonos that are in the Beis Hamikdash themselves. Elahanu. The only types of things that we're listing off that are in the mikdash itself are things that if they leave the confines of the mikdash, they'll become possible. The hides, though they're given to them there, but they're not confined. They're not confined at all. That's correct. That's correct. Rashi speaks it out. The Rashi, the only reason why it says Yerushalayim is lafuke. Okay, is lafuke that it has to be inside. So let's see the Gemara Vayter. So those are the 4, and then the Gevulim of Asar Gevulim are Truma, right? Truma anywhere the Kohen gets Truma, with Truma Smeiser, the Chala, the Reish Zagez, V'Matanos is the Zeroya, L'Chayim and Keva that's given from every animal, that's shechted, carbon and not carbon, given to the Kohen. Upidin Leben, Upidin Pet Chamor, Ustei Chuza, Ustei Charamim, the Gezel Agir, and Vikakar Shmiya Matana. We're referring to Gezel Ger as a matana. Shema mina, makabel matana sava, shema mina. We have to stop here because it's 6:50. There's a lot of Torah. There's a big discussion here. Most of these things are negay even chutz la'aretz. Oh, I'm sorry. The shayla to negay chutz la'aretz or not. But the Eretz Yisrael, they're irrelevant. Truma, in the Eretz Yisrael, you got to take a truma off the payers. There's special hechsher that you know that the proper trumas were taken off. So what about Zeroya, L'Chayim, and Keva, the matnas kuna from every meat? Did you ever see a hechsher in Eretz Yisrael that says Mufrash mimenu matnas kuna? Never, no such thing. So there's actually a big discussion even nowadays how it's dealt with, because there is a chiyuv matnas kuna today in Eretz Yisrael. As a matter of fact, the Chassam Sofer said over that even in Chutz La'aretz, once a year before Pesach, his Rebbe would buy an animal shechted and special go out of his way to give this roya, the chayayim and keva to a kohen. But there's a big shadow how it's done. There are those who, from each animal, the shlachtos puts away some money and gives to the kohen because they buy it back off the kohen. but it does have to be dealt with, and different shlachtoisen have different methods of how they deal with it. But even today, you still have to give the kohen the zroy l'chaim keva. So, punkt, if you ever invite a kohen to your house, try to serve him tongue or some meat, so you can say, "Oh, I got my ziraya, chayayim, and keva in." Okay, everyone should have a wonderful day.
That's not if you buy the tongue and dust.